Okay, for people joining this live stream, we are talking about an application of our SPARQL capabilities and graph databases to Wikidata. All right, so external identifier is a general mechanism for dealing with outside identifiers, such as DOIs, correct?
Yes.
And the second argument here of external identifier is what? Is the external is a string representing the external system's specification, is that right?
Not necessarily a string, but typically, yes.
Okay, and what's the third argument here?
The third optional argument is about metadata, and if there's a label property, it's used for formatting. This is different from entities because entities receive the formatting from outside while external identifiers embed their metadata. This is an important and deliberate distinction.
Okay, I think this is a little bit bold here, by the way, in terms of the formatting. Okay, the label is often a link. Wait a minute, the URL, what's this? I don't understand this.
You can click into the blue box on the label and it opens the URL.
This blue box?
Yes, but also the DOI. That means certain identifier types have a base URL or a URL template associated with them. And with that, a link can be created.
For convenience.
Okay, so wait a minute. I click the name there, but if I click the thing that says Wikidata ID, nothing happens. So it's just that part that's active, is that right?
Yes. Because for usability, I like being able to click twice on the type to highlight the whole blue box and then copy and paste it.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so this is, so in external identifier, there are various properties, is that correct? And such as URL, is that right?
Yes, internally it's a URL template that's filled with the ID.
Okay, I understand. But that, so somewhere in the definition, so to add an external identifier, to add a type of external identifier, what do you do? Is there a way of registering a new external identifier? Is that hard code, or is there intended to be a repository one day of external identifier templates or something, or what?
For now, we have a curated list that's going to be expanded, and we'll have to consider how we register new ones.
What services does an external identifier provide?
An external identifier by itself, none. For instance, there might be one organization that defines this identifier and a couple of other organizations that actually store them. So there's no one-to-one correspondence between them. That's why, for instance, labels of certain things have to be embedded in the external identifier because there's no canonical way for retrieving them.
So, okay. I saw this interesting example recently of a collection of sites. I think there's some kind of fan sites about something like the video games or something, where people generate IDs for things, and then they're essentially volunteer curators who knit together different IDs for the same thing that people have produced. I thought that was sort of an interesting model for how to deal with producing a large number of different, I mean, we don't have that. If we were to produce, private identifiers for things, there's a question how they get knitted together. I mean, this is different. This external identifier is dealing with pre-existing identifiers, right? But yeah, okay.
So a future project is to allow the user to introduce and use their own identifiers and have some prototype of that, but that's way in the future and not even included in this review yet.
Okay, I understand. But I mean, eventually, one could imagine an external identifier repository, and then that would also define how to document all these different external identifier cases. But for right now, we'll probably just list these on the external identifier reference page, right?
Yes.
For various cases. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's take a look then here at where we're not seeing the correct. But let's take a look. It did work. If I reevaluate, it worked fine here. Okay. So that works. This is in the 12.1 prototype. So that thing URL. Okay, how do I get the raw string out of this?
First, I don't think URL has any properties.
Okay. Okay. Whoops. All right. Wikidata search.
It's an analog to Wikipedia search, but for Wikidata. It's using essentially the same syntax.
What's using the same syntax? Is it using the same syntax as Wikipedia search?
Yes.
Whatever.
Where you specify the type of thing that you want back, a property or item, as a rule.
Okay.
One important feature is that each value is always a list.
Well, hold on a second. So why is that a list? Why is that not just a value?
Because neither in RDF nor in Wikidata, there's a constraint that would say the value can only be a singleton. So, and there might be various different values claimed by different people. And in this case, we just show the value, but later we'll see that we can also retrieve the sources for each value. Yeah. There you see how it's getting more important. Or by child, you see that usually there.
What is this? What on earth is that?
So each external identifier type.
Yeah, but this is, so wait a minute. This is a very incomplete. What the heck is this? I mean, this is a book, right?
Yes.
I don't understand. I mean, this is a book with 3 authors. So this is a mess as usual. I don't understand how this. Why is the Wikidata ID just the word gravitation?
No, the format of the Wikidata ID is gravitation.
Whose format? Theirs, ours, whose?
Yes, so Wikidata associates with each of their identifiers a label and a description, and in each language. That's why we have a language option. And well, this gravitation is their label for that ID.
Okay, by the way, can we please, again, not have these be so bold? It really doesn't look right.
Yes.
Do they also have images for some of this stuff?
Yes.
Is that worth displaying in here? Probably not. I mean, if I take this and I say, now, can I just look at a property of this?
No. And the reason is that by just having that ID, we don't know yet in general where to look it up. And as a courtesy to Wikidata, we don't want random functions to make requests to their servers. So there should be an explicit function with Wikidata and a name to trigger a call to the Wikidata servers.
Well, I don't understand. I mean, so we're using their servers, although we could presumably have our own mirror of these things, right?
Yes. So there is an option, currently a string, that's called SPARQL endpoint, and there you can point it to your own server.
Okay. That should be, by the way, some kind of something based, just like we have blockchain based and so on. It should also be in Brad's list of system servers, right?
Mhm.
Okay, but so now how do I find out what properties this has? Can I say properties here?
You can say all, comma, association. But yeah, I can add support for. If you say comma, association, the string, then you see what properties those values correspond to.
Can I say comma data set?
Yes.
So why is this for not formatting?
Because this is just a string. There's a special property called entity, which parses that actually and converts it into an expression. Yeah. Checking for malicious code.
Sorry, I don't understand. This is our ID, right?
Yeah, someone, and I don't know who at Wikidata proposed that property and was created. And some people have been filling that out, and there are more than 18,000 items that have this code. And we can take advantage of that and, well, convert those Wikidata IDs to entities using that property value.
Okay. But I mean, why isn't this formatting like our yellow entity?
Because this is still a string.
Okay, but why?
Because the data type of that property is just string. There are other data types like quantity or item.
But we know what that we know what that's at least supposed to be, right?
We could make an exception for that property and post-process whenever that.
I think so. Yeah, I would think we should do that. But now, in this case, okay, by the way, what's the order of things that we're seeing in here?
There's no defined order if you say all.
Okay, well, maybe we should figure out some appropriate order. Okay.
One important thing that you see here is that we don't have all of those external identifiers of Wikidata yet, and we probably won't have them ever because they have links to over 4,000 external identifier types. And I imagine that we would curate, say, 100.
Wait. Which one do I not see here?
No, for instance, the Google Books ID. Yeah, you see, it's an external identifier, but we haven't curated that particular ID yet. So the identifier for this external identifier type is again an external identifier.
I see.
So.
Okay.
So if we ever curate, it becomes just a string.
Okay. So if we get this, oops, that wasn't very helpful. How on earth do I even select this? How do I select this?
I don't know about dataset.
I think if you right click on it and choose copy data to clipboard.
Kind of unfortunate that we have to go through all of this Wikidata data stuff. Okay. What's ISNI?
International Standard Name Identifier. You have one too.
I'm so flattered.
It's an ISO standard.
Now, I mean, in a case like this, where we have mapped that Wikidata ID to an entity of ours, right?
Mhm.
What's the reason to not just give our entity here?
Because the mapping will always be incomplete, and then we would have a heterogeneous list.
How do I convert this to our entity here?
You can say Wikidata data of that thing, comma, entity.
Okay, so if I take this here, this here, and I say entity, is that correct?
Yes.
That doesn't look very promising.
Well, they haven't been filled out, but it should work for Albert Einstein or Germany.
Well, no, but what are you talking about filled out? I don't understand. We've already got...
There are actually two mappings. One is, which the Wikidata community does, they fill out their property, the Wolfram Language entity code. The other mapping is we curate Wikidata IDs for our entities.
I thought we already did that. I mean, Alan, is Alan here?
Alan's sick today.
Okay.
I can answer that. We have about half of People Data has Wikidata IDs attached to them.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's always an ongoing process for all domains.
Yeah.
Okay. But so if I picked a random person here, there's a decent chance that they would have a Wikidata ID.
Yes.
So I'll show later in the document more entity integration things. This is mostly pure Wikidata stuff in this basic chapter.
Okay. Oh boy.
And this is a function that we might not need. That was the first idea, but later I came up with a better one. But the idea is that we have implicit entity class like syntax to form.
Yeah, why isn't that just Wikidata data again?
We would. Where do you place those rules? In the first argument?
Yes.
That would be possible, but I still think we might need a wrapper to distinguish that we are having a query.
Maybe. Okay. Well, anyway. Okay.
So this function with the long name might be useful if the Wikidata update meta information might be useful if you have just the IDs and you want to format them properly. It takes a list and can format multiple IDs at a time.
There's way too many functions here. This is not some random package that's going to have 3,000 functions. I mean, we have to reduce the number of functions. I don't know what the heck this is. What is this one?
This one could be skipped.
Good. Let's do it. What is it? What is it doing?
It is retrieving the label and description for that item from Wikidata, and it's embedding it into the identifier.
But in general, we need such a function. Like, assume you have a list of 100K of DOIs. Automatically filling out would be a total waste of time. But we need some functionality to fill it out.
Yeah.
So here the idea is that you can use entities, properties, and implicit entity classes whenever there's a corresponding Wikidata ID. And this function that you are evaluating now, it's not working yet because those alignments are not on production yet, because we need to align, but they will be evaluated on the Wikidata servers, those queries.
Ugh. This is a mess. I mean, because, yeah.
It's a beautiful mess.
You like this? Well, maybe we should just
The
use Wikidata,
functionality is super, super cool.
especially if the data isn't all garbage.
I'm already seeing things in here that are directly useful to projects I'm working on right now, like that Wikidata graph. I'm working on a project to see how many people we have to add to people data if we expand familial relationships out at a number of steps. And this is going to be directly helpful for me there.
Fair enough. Let's see to the end of this. Okay, so let me see what happens if I were to do. Okay, so if I would simply say Wikidata graph Albert Einstein 2, or all,
Maybe the second argument, say all. That could be a 40 megabyte graph or so. So it could take a few seconds, but it should work. It's huge because already at step 1, you get a very dense graph that you can barely read.
All right, well, let's try somebody more obscure. So let's try
a search, I guess.
Yeah, this needs to be cleaned somewhat. More obscure, let's try. Oh boy.
So now the embedded metadata comes in very handy.
What embedded metadata?
When you hover over there, the tooltip, the description. So in Wikidata, they have the rule that in each language, the combination of label and description needs to be unique.
Well, why aren't we giving the description then here as a parenthesis or something? Because this is not very useful. I mean, and this.
Well, it depends on the context. Sometimes this description might clutter things too much.
Well, we could give a piece of the description with a ... This is still taking its time. So this one, okay, so that's a random biographical article, not. So how do we tell if this is a person or a random biographical article?
There's a property called instance of, and that points to some class in Wikidata.
Okay. Okay.
So here, in this case, the number of results was over 1,000. Therefore, the labels are not being displayed because they would be useless anyway. And there might have to be an option to control that.
I don't understand why this got so dense there. I mean, this is one level, but that's just showing. Oh, I see. That's an edge label and a destination. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, so some of these are aligned to our entities and some are not. But we don't know at this point which ones are which. Although we could know, couldn't we?
We could say for that list, Wikidata data of that list, comma, entity.
No. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in the display here. Some of these we already know correspond to our entities and some we do not. Correct?
Yes, but it might be time consuming to do it.
Brilliant.
So that is the failure of Wikidata, because Wikidata has not aligned their entities with our entities. The reverse, we could try to look up in our database which of them correspond to our.
I would do that. I mean, why don't we just create a database which is the inversion of our mapping to Wikidata IDs so that we can do this?
That's what two from entity could do, and that's a question later in this.
Well, but this should work as well. I mean, unless this is just okay, this is just show the garbage that's in Wikidata and nothing else. I mean, that's which is what you're suggesting here. That this is just a pure Wikidata wrapper.
Yes, so my opinion would be that whenever the function is called Wikidata something, then only the Wikidata servers are consulted.
All right, let's take a look here. What is this? What the heck is this?
So Wikidata doesn't store facts, but statements. That is what someone has said. And those usually come with qualifiers and references. By default, we just show the value.
Well, so it's a string. Is that true, or is it something else?
Say it again.
Is it a string, or is it something else that is actually stored?
No, it's, for instance, for quantity, it's stored.
No, I'm talking about the whole thing. I'm talking about if I just want to return the whole thing, whatever is in Wikidata about water boiling point. How do I get that here?
Oh, it's a graph.
Okay, so if I say all of that third argument, what do I get?
Of water?
No, of this, right? This.
There's some argument that doesn't mean anything currently.
Okay, but there should be some way of getting everything that is in Wikidata associated with that entity and property, right?
Yes, that is currently what statement format goes to association does. Or we could have statement format goes to all, which implies association.
That's fine. Okay. Why is that taking so long?
Those queries are more complex. It goes around a lot of corners to retrieve all of that information. Note how all of those IDs are nicely labeled. That's an incredibly complicated query that spans multiple pages.
Okay.
SPARQL query.
Which we automatically generate.
Yes. So this one is translated to a symbolic SPARQL and from there to a SPARQL string. Yeah. And then when the result comes back, it is interpreted, which is also.
I mean, Wikidata data is then adding values, because then I don't have to invent that crazy SPARQL query.
Yes, it hides a lot of the complexity of the data model of Wikidata.
Good. Okay. So let's keep going here, and then we're going to loop back to the beginning again. What is this?
So this is a quick overview of the identifier types that we have. So this one shows the Wikidata statement of how many identifiers are of a given type. Those are not the counts in Wikidata, but those are statements that they store. That means someone claimed that there are 190 million DOIs.
I'm pretty sure that's correct. I've read this in various places.
And for some, there is no statement.
Okay. What the heck is all this stuff?
Well, that's just my code for generating this nice table. So this is not something that would be exposed necessarily to the user.
I don't think this is the right way to do this. I mean, if we have $external identifier types, it's going to be a list of types. This is a different thing.
Yes, that's why it's in an internal context. It's not meant for the user.
Well, I mean, it might be useful to have $external identifier types, but it should just be the strings, and this should be $external identifier type information or something.
Yes, or external identifier type data or something like that.
Fine. I suggest you change that so we can have a $external identifier types that actually is a reasonably civilized list.
I think the external identifiers themselves should be entities, and then we associate properties, who maintains them, how many there are, and so on.
Fine. Sensible idea. Yeah, I see. So there's an entity type called external identifier.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Or external identifier type. So one question I had, how we should name those types.
Which types?
Those external identifier types. Let's say I want to add an external identifier type for items in the German National Library. How should we call that type? Or in the French National Library? Or library?
But it already has a name, right?
No, I haven't curated any national libraries yet. That's why this question. How should we do that?
I don't know because I don't know what it's supposed to. I mean, I don't understand. It's like a Library of Congress. I mean, there's an accession number for the Library of Congress or something. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, for instance, the Library of Congress.
Okay, so what, Aaron? What are those called?
Just what Tony said, the Library of Congress Authority ID. There's also the Library of Congress Control Number, the LCCN.
Okay.
Which is the accession number for a bibliographic record.
Okay.
Well, we can discuss that internally and come up with a proposal. So this one, the first chapter that you see here, is about not introducing Wikidata lookup, but instead reusing the entity class syntax.
Okay, look, listen. This whole thing. Okay, so look, let's zoom out for a moment. Okay, so we have our own well-curated system for all of this stuff. The question is, Wikidata has all kinds of information in it, some of which is right, some of which is messy, some of which is wrong, some of which aligns with what we have, some of which doesn't. And the question is, to what extent can we make this work the same way? And I just don't understand why we can't make Wikidata ID one of these Wikidata. What is this thing again? This is an external identifier, right? This thing here. Okay. So the Great Giant Magellan Telescope. Okay. So I don't understand why we can't make that work, using our standard syntax here.
This is our standard syntax.
Let's take another example.
No. Wait a second. So if I give a property here, this does not currently work, right? I mean, the only property that works here is something like URL, because this is an external identifier object.
Correct.
This isn't the actual thing itself. This is merely an external identifier. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Say if the type is not Wikidata ID, but say ISBN 13, what would the canonical call be? Which server would you call? That's.
But Stephen, this end of prop, it's just some syntactic sugar for entity value.
I know.
So what's wrong with using the longer form?
Which longer form?
Entity value.
Because people want to use this. And they don't want to explain that in certain cases. Look, I don't know. I mean, okay, the other problem is that you've got this thing about the fact that you don't have single values. You have lists because everybody doesn't know what they're actually, what the actual value is here. I mean
there might be things where that doesn't exist, a single value, yeah.
I understand that, but we have the same issue. So hold on. So, I mean, the obvious question that comes to mind is, the trouble is there's a certain amount of crud in Wikidata. There's good stuff and there's crud, right? And I mean, so, for example, here, I'm sure if I say control equals overwhelmingly large telescope. No, we don't know what that is. That's surprising. Well, how
I'm
come?
pretty sure the word overwhelmingly is not any linguistics anybody has reasonably used.
Well, but it is, I mean, the extremely large telescope I know is a thing. How come that doesn't? I mean, we have telescopes, right? It's called ELT, as I recall. So how come we don't have that? Something weird is going on here. But okay, fair enough. I mean,
so the larger
telescopes are not an exposed entity type.
Oh. How come?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, I mean,
So my idea about those external identifiers are that they just are there to stand for themselves, and then there might be different services that support a different subset of identifier types. Let's say there might be an archive data that, just supports those archive IDs.
All right. Listen. If we're going to do this, we need to have these things visually look more different from entities. Okay?
Yes.
This looks way too similar to entities. First of all, that bold face doesn't help anything. I don't know exactly how to do that. Maybe it's dotted lines around it. I don't know. But right now, these look like entities and people will get confused. So we have to figure out a way to make them look less like entities.
That seems like a solvable problem.
Right. But, I mean, then the second question is, from a curation point of view, now that we have nice, easy access to this, which we've had some access to it for ages, figuring out how to curate everything that is worth curating here, which is more Aaron and Alan's issue. But presumably, given that we now have easy access here, it will become easier to do that. Is that a true statement?
Yes.
But with the emphasis a little bit of easier, like when you said earlier, Wikidata has bad data, which definitely is the case, it might be non-trivial to figure out what's the right data.
Oh, to be sure, yes.
Of course.
But as far as walking from our data to Wikidata and back and forth, this simplifies things for us.
All right, let's take a look here. Okay. So I want to come back to
maybe I have an idea. What about I know it's not your favorite function, but people do use it heavily, system options. What about having in system options a subclass of option that specifies the preferred external service to use for a certain external identifier type, and then the end of prop would automatically go there and pick it up?
Why on earth would it be there?
Because it fits pretty well the definition of what's in system options.
No, it shouldn't be in system options. I mean, if it's in something like that, it should be in some kind of. I mean, that's much more like system servers and so on. I mean, it just system options isn't quite the right place. But what's your point? I mean, your point is that then
would have such a place, then end of prop could be made work.
Yes, I understand, but we just agreed that we weren't going to treat these external identifiers as entities.
But this doesn't mean we don't want end of prop to work. This doesn't imply it in any form.
Okay, but then this becomes not an external identifier, but some kind of entity, which is a little different.
No. Everything stays as it is.
Okay.
Just that we would allow sub-value application.
Well, we already have the URL sub-value.
Exactly.
But that's something that can be computed without server access.
Well,
Exactly.
I know.
I'm not quite sure what problem we try to solve.
Well, what we're trying to solve is, the question is, are we going to pretend that these are like our entities or not? Right? Now, if their semantics is way different in the sense that they always have lists as values and weird stuff like that, then maybe it's better that we don't pretend that they're like our entities. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
I think the list argument, there might also be some tendency to make those values from entities more lists, because
no, we're not going to do that. No, we've got a whole system that's built not doing that, right? So we're not going to do that. We're not going to change our system because Wikidata happens to do something, right? So no.
Not in general, but there are properties that return lists. For
yes,
instance.
there are, but not every property returns a list, right? And in this case, every property returns a list, right? Is that not correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so a property like a person's a river's discharge rate for us is a number that you can compute. You can add it to something else, right? It doesn't return a list, right? Which would cause it not to be able to be combined with other things, right? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so I think it's better. Okay, so let's zoom out again for a second, okay? So first thing is, we got to make these IDs look less like entities if they are not in fact, because they're not in fact entities, they're IDs. Now, I admit it does look somewhat different here, but I don't think it looks different enough. But okay, that, as you say, is a solvable problem. Now, here, okay, so this is auto-converting, but this is working in this
only potentially working on server current for now.
Okay, but this is using our mapping from our entities to Wikidata IDs, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now meanwhile, we will have something else, which is a mapping from Wikidata IDs to our entities, which presumably, I mean, let's see. Yeah, I mean, that could perfectly well be a sub-value of the Wikidata of the external identifier, right? And should be. Am I making sense?
Yep.
Yes.
Also, conceptually, I would find from entity to entity the better choice.
That would be fine, but I think the sub-value entity could also work.
Yeah.
Okay. So from entity, no, wait. From, what does from entity do right now? So from entity,
it goes from an entity to, like you have, say, Wolfram Language data. It goes to the corresponding symbol.
Okay, but so from entity, unless we had a second argument from entity, no, do we want that? I mean, so, hold on.
To entity needs a second argument because we might go to different entity types for one thing.
Okay, but so the idea would be to entity of an external identifier with one argument would attempt to go to the corresponding entity, right?
Right.
Okay.
But there
And
might be multiple.
yes, no, there will not be multiple ones. No,
Let's
there
say
will not.
a person and an astronaut.
Okay, that's a question of dealing with our hierarchy, which we are getting to separately, which hopefully you're going to work on real soon, right, Tony? And that's not going to be a separate issue there.
In this concrete state, but in general, I think Tony is right. There will be not a one-to-one mapping because the ontologies are different.
Well, I think that's a mess.
But it's not we didn't do it.
Yeah.
But,
Well, fair enough.
to entity, we could just use the second argument of the entity type we're looking for. If there is.
No, I agree. I just think it should try to return a single thing. So from entity is normally going to a Wolfram language, to a pure Wolfram language representation, if there is one.
Correct.
And I would have thought that what we would want is something more like external identifier. Now, okay, the first argument of the external identifier, I see.
It's what kind of...
No, wait a second. We had a design previously for going from our entities to an external identifier. What is that design? Right, remember that?
I thought,
Aaron,
Tony, this is what Ellen sent you?
Well, I don't remember reading that, but...
Okay. So I'll go find it because that's in my notes.
Entities could have a property called Wikidata ID and ISBN.
No, because we'll have hundreds of those. Okay, let's see. I have something from last year, from almost exactly a year ago. This is about phone numbers. Why is it that's about phone numbers? Did this ever get done? Did this get done?
I don't think so.
Oh, sigh. Okay. I see. So the idea here was to have the external identifier have its identifier system, right? That's subcasing inside an external identifier, which is not quite what you've done, right?
Yes.
Did you see those notes or not?
Yes, I have looked at them.
Okay.
In detail, but this is the best design I could come up with, or based on those notes.
Okay. So let's go through what your design is relative to this design. Can you really comment on this design? Because I really would like to understand why we're not and whatever happened to the bibliographic item stuff?
We never did it because there came other priorities along external ones.
Fair enough. We should give this phone number thing. Is anybody taking notes or project managing or anything? I mean, this phone number thing, we should give that to Johan and see whether he can find somebody to do this.
I can tell Ellen.
Yeah. This shouldn't be very hard. And similarly with personal name, we should get both of these done. They're both worthwhile things to do. Okay, so let's come back here to this whole question about. So I'm a little confused. Let's start at the beginning again. Okay. So this is all good, but the question is, how do we go from an entity to the external identifier? Is it the case that what we do?
But because sorry, I agree that's a question to be asked, but it's in some sense measure theoretic an irrelevant one. Like okay. The DOIs, we don't have, of the 190 million, we don't have a single corresponding entity.
Fine, but we certainly do for Wikidata, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at what we do in the case where we're converting from our entities to some external identifier. Do we believe that that mapping is one-to-one?
Not necessarily. Different ontologies can resolve items in different ways. For instance, in Wikidata, there might be a single person which has 20 identifiers and music brains, because this same person acts as different artists. So in general, they're
okay. All right. Okay.
Additionally, it's not unheard of for these external sources to have duplicate entities, just like we do occasionally. Well, 2 identifiers for the same person, and that is a fixable problem on their end, but it's still a problem we have to deal with.
I think there are a couple of even famous physicists who change gender, which are twice represented then as different persons.
Even DOIs have duplicates sometimes. The same document has 2 different DOIs, which isn't supposed to happen, but does.
Yeah, because publishers were selling the journal to the next one, they re-indexed.
Okay. Okay, so look, one thing we need clearly. Okay, so first question. Okay, look, first statement, Tony, this is all very nice. Okay. I'm just first question is this going to be a package or is this going to be a built-in set of things? External identifier is certainly going to be a built-in thing.
Well, and if we have Wikipedia data, we could have Wikidata data.
Yeah, sure. Okay, but we should try to minimize the number of functions here. So
Yes, we can already drop 2, the update meta information and the lookup.
Okay.
We wouldn't lose any functionality without them.
The Wikidata graph is so nice, we have to have it.
Yeah.
As their own function, or?
I think so. Unless we had that be a third argument to Wikidata data.
Tony and I discussed it, but Tony doesn't like this idea.
Yeah, because there might need to be graph options and parameters. Yeah. It's not easy to integrate it into Wikidata data.
Although it is consistently thought of as a Wikidata return type.
Right. We would just then have some kind of meta or styling or whatever option to the whole thing too.
Well, it's just a random other options that you could add to Wikidata data that would style the graph.
Correct.
Which doesn't seem that horrifying. It's a little bit unfortunate to not be able to document the Wikidata data options because they might add some graph display options. Well, my other question
will be dependent on the third argument.
Yeah, right. How useful is the Wikidata graph? It's impressive to look at, but how useful is it? If I were to try to extract things from this graph, could I do it?
Yes, so this graph stores in a meaningful way its data. So you can retrieve edges that connect certain things. So it's not just nice to look at, but programmatically.
How can you do that? I mean, with our graph theory operations?
Well, I didn't include that because this notebook is already too big, but I have some functionality.
No, but is it new functionality that you've invented, or is it just standard functionality from?
It's standard. It's using the property mechanism to store the relevant information.
I think that's not what Stephen asked. You could do find shortest path and all this stuff.
Yeah, but if I wanted to know
highest node and vertex degrees and so on.
Yeah, but could I extract the fact that Elsa was the most ignored child or something here? For no, that was the wife.
What do you mean by the phrase most ignored?
I don't know. By having fewest links or something. I don't know. I mean, could I find that node name? Is that the node name? What is the actual structure of this graph?
It's a graph object, and you can apply edge list and vertex list to get started looking at what that is. And then there's an edge list, and then you have properties in the sense of system backtick property.
Which has been renamed, right? That's no longer called property. You know that, right?
I was not aware.
Me either.
It's been renamed. And it's supposed to be changed for 12.1. Because we're getting rid of that stupid property thing.
So as you can see here, in those edges, you don't see yet what the property was that created this X. So this is also stored in the graph.
Where?
I'll look a few seconds, please.
Okay.
You can probably just make input form of the graph, then you see what's inside.
Yeah, no, I understand.
That might be dangerous.
Okay. All right, I understand. Well, okay, look, provisionally, let's assume we're going to have this function.
So you could say property value of a list.
I understand. I get it. I hate that function. It was introduced in some way that evaded design review several years ago, and it has subsequently been killed. In fact, I should check that
Stephen, any bigger things? I would have to go to another meeting, and I think Tony has some ideas what to do.
No, I think this is pretty nice. I think we should look at it. I mean, unfortunately, if we had probably another half hour, we could nail this completely.
Let's first make the changes. I think might be easier going from there.
All right. Okay. Fine. It's really nice, though. It's really nice, and hopefully we can use it to. I mean, hopefully, I don't know what. We do need to get this thing going from our entities to our entities straightened out.
That seems to me one of the most easy ones. That's pure mechanics.
Fair enough. And then I would be interested to know, what can we really? I mean, obviously we've been using things from here, but as Aaron says, it's very hard to know what's correct, what's not correct, and so on. Yeah. Well, fair enough. Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. See you all soon. Bye.
Bye.